Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding a Mishnah Berurah Chelik Vav, and we will be learning today Mirz Hashem Daf Kuf Samach Amid Beis. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Megillah. We pick up on the bottom line of the Ramah on Kuf Samach Amid Aleph, Siman Taf Reish Tzadik Daled Sif Aleph. So we kind of ended abruptly yesterday. We were speaking about the minhag of giving machatzis hashekel on Erev Purim. So let's remind ourselves. In Parshas Kisisa, in the Parsha of the machatzis hashekel, the very first Parsha of Parshas Kisisa, the pasuk mentions the word truma 3 times. We have one pasuk that says, Ze yitnu kal ha'over ala pekudim machatzis hashekel b'shekel ha'kodesh esrim gera hashekel machatzis hashekel truma l'Hashem. So that pasuk discusses a machatzis hashekel that everybody in Klal Yisrael will give, and it calls it a truma l'Hashem. That's the first mention of truma. The very next pasuk Yodal, it says, Kol ha'over al ha'pekudim, everyone who passed through the counting of Klal Yisrael, mi ben esrim shana v'mala, which means the males above the age of 20, yitain trumas Hashem, they will give trumas Hashem. Again, we have the word truma, trumas Hashem. So that's the second mention of truma. Then in pasuk Tezvav, ha'asher lo yarbe, a wealthy individual cannot give more. Va'adal lo yamit, a pauper cannot give less machatzis hashekel than a machatzis hashekel. Losei says trumas Hashem, to give the trumas Hashem lechaper al nafshay sechem. So here in this pasuk, we had the third mention of the word truma. Now Chazal tell us that the reason we have 3 mentions of truma in this parsha is a reference to 3 different trumas. What are the 3 different trumas? Well, one is from Parshas Truma. Parshas Truma, where the Rebbeinu Shalom speaks about building the Mishkan. So the Rebbeinu Shalom says to Moshe Rabbeinu, Daber el Bnei Yisrael, speak to the Bnei Yisrael, v'yikchu li truma, and they should take for me a truma. What's a truma? Rashi says, hafrosha. They should set aside funds. Yafrishu li, they should set aside for me, mimamoidam, from their funds, nadava, a donation. So that's a truma. So the very first truma that we have is the trumas hamishkan, the truma that everybody gave towards the building of the Mishkan. Then we have another truma. That's the truma of the machatzis hashekel. Every member of Klal Yisrael gave a machatzis hashekel of silver, and that went towards the casting of the adonim. The adonim were those foundation sockets. The krushim, the beams that formed the walls of the Mishkan, had prongs, or kind of like, I guess you would call them rungs. That's how the pasuk refers to them. But they had pegs that protruded from the bottom, and they sat inside silver sockets that formed the foundation of the walls of the Mishkan. They were made out of silver, and they were cast from the silver of the machatzis hashekel that Klal Yisrael gave. So we have one truma where people gave towards the construction of the Mishkan. Whatever they felt like giving, that's what they gave. Somebody had blue wool, he gave blue wool. Another person wanted to give gold, he gave gold. Somebody else had purple wool, argamon, he gave argamon. One person wanted to give more, he gave more. One person wanted to give less, he gave less. So that was the Trumas HaMishkan, the donations to build the Mishkan. Then we had the Trumas Adonim. Everybody had to give an equal amount. Everybody had to give a machatzis hashekel. Moshe Rabbeinu took that silver. B'tzalel, I assume, is the one who did it, who cast the silver to make the adonim, to make the sockets for the foundation of the krushim. And then finally, we have a third truma. That truma is what's known as the trumas halishka. That was hamachatzis hashekel that everybody in Klal Yisrael gave once a year towards the purchase of animals for the korbanos tzibbur. The timidim that were brought every day, the musafim that were brought on Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, Yomim Tovim. Everybody has to have a chelik in the korban. So once a year, we would collect from everybody a machatzis hashekel, put it into a lishka, into a chamber in the Beis HaMikdash, and Every year, beginning with Nisan, they would start to withdraw funds from that lishka for the purchase of that year's korbanos tzibbur, and in that way, everybody had a chelik in the korbanos tzibbur. Now, when was the trumas halishka? When was that final truma, the truma that was used for the purchase of the animals for the korbanos? When was that collected? So the Mishnah at the beginning of Shkalim tells us that they started to make that collection on Rosh Chodesh Adar. Rosh Chodesh Adar, they started to announce everybody has to give their machatzis hashekel. The machatzis hashekel had to be paid by Rosh Chodesh Nisan, because by Rosh Chodesh Nisan, that's when they would start withdrawing funds for the New Year's korbanos. Now, there's a very interesting Ma'amar Chazal in the Gemara in Megillah. I think it's on Yudalid. Amud Aleph, where the Gemara tells us. I actually wrote it down. Yud Gimel Amud Beis. The Gemara says on Yud Gimel Amud Beis, Amar Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish said, Galoi v'yadua lifnei mi she'amar v'haya ha'olam. It was well known to the Rabbeinu Shalom, to mi she'amar v'haya ha'olam, to the one who spoke and created the world in Asara Ma'amoros. It was well known to the Rabbeinu Shalom, she'asid Haman lishkal shkalim al Yisrael, that there would come a day where Haman would go into Achashverosh and he would offer Achashverosh Aseres alofim kikar kesef, 10,000 bars of silver, 10,000 talents of silver. So he would offer Achashverosh shkalim in order to entice him to pass the decree to chas v'chalila wipe out Klal Yisrael. So it was known to the Rabbeinu Shalom that would happen. Lefikach, therefore, hikdim shiklehen lishkalov. The Rabbeinu Shalom had our shkalim come before Haman's shkalim. V'hainu ditran, and that's what we learned in the Mishnah, be'echad ba'adar mashmiin al hashkalim. On Rosh Chodesh Adar, that's when the shkalim are collected. So the machatzis hashekel is collected on Rosh Chodesh Adar. That's when the collection begins. That comes before Yudalid Adar. That comes before Purim. So the Rabbeinu Shalom saw that there was going to be a terrible decree. He wanted the schus of our shkalim to come before the shkalim of Haman. So every year, our shkalim are collected earlier than Purim. Also, simply put, in the Midbar already Klal Yisrael gave a machatzis hashekel towards the Adonim, and every year after that they gave a machatzis hashekel towards the korbanos. So certainly our shkalim came before. It's very interesting. You find a very similar idea by Bilam. By Bilam, it says that when Bilam went to go curse Klal Yisrael, it says Vayachavosh es asoinoi. He got up early in the morning. Bilam says in Parshas Balak, it says, Vayokam Bilam baboker. Bilam got up in the morning, Vayachavosh es asoinoi, and he saddled his donkey, Vayelech imsarei Moav, and he went together with the princes of Moav to go curse Klal Yisrael. Rashi says, Vayachavosh es asoinoi, he saddled his donkey. Mikan, you learn out from here, Shahasina mekalkeles es hashura, that hatred goes ahead and perverts things that are normally straight. What does it mean? Shechav ashu ba'atzmai. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says, a person like Bilam was not in the practice of saddling his own donkey. He had servants for such menial tasks. But he was so hell-bent on going to go curse Klal Yisrael. Hell-bent is a good way of putting it, because that's where he was headed. He was so hell-bent on going to curse Klal Yisrael that he broke from his normal, haughty practice, and instead of waiting for the servants to saddle his donkey, he went ahead and he did it himself. Now the pasuk also says, Vayokam Bilam baboker. He got up nice and early. You know, he was gangbusters. He was all ready to go. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Rabbeinu Shalom said, Russia, what you are. Kvar kidamcha Avraham avihem. Avram Avinu already beat you to the punch. Shenamar, because it says by Avram Avinu by the Akedah, Vayashkem Avraham baboker. Avraham Avinu got up early in the morning. Vayachavoishes chamoiroi. And he saddled his chamor in order to go to the Akedah. The Rishon Zatzal, Rav Moshe Zecher Tzaddik V'Kodesh Levracha, asks, what was going on over here? What was this conversation, sort of, between the Rabbeinu Shalom and Bilam? It sounds like Bilam was trying to do something. He was trying to accomplish something. And the Rabbeinu Shalom told him, Kfar ki damnucha avihem. Avram Avinu beat you to the punch. So Rav Moshe explains, he says, Bilam knew that in order to curse Klal Yisrael, he had to first find a chink in their armor. He had to find a weakness by Klal Yisrael that he could be kitrig. He had to be able to come to the Rabbeinu Shalom and say, look, there's something wrong with them. They're doing something wrong. And therefore, I have room to come in and give them a curse. So what did he do? He said, I'll get up early in the morning with zrizus, and I'll go and I'll be moiser nefesh, and I'll saddle my own donkey. For what? In order to go curse Klal Yisrael. And then I'll show the Rabbeinu Shalom, look what a zariz I am to do the things that I want to do. I'm mamish a zariz. Normally I sleep 3 or 4 hours into the day. Today, I got up bright and early to go curse Klal Yisrael. Normally I let the servants saddle the donkey. Today, to go curse Klal Yisrael, I did it myself. Do they have the same zrizus for Torah and mitzvahs? Do they have the same mesiras nefesh for Torah and mitzvahs? If they don't, then there's chas v'chalila kitrik on Klal Yisrael, and now there's room for my curse to come in and get them. Said the Rabbeinu Shalom, you don't know what you're talking about. The Rabbeinu Shalom said, are you kidding? Kvar kidamcha Avraham avihem. Avraham Avinu, he beat you to the punch. He already taught them by the Akedah the value of zrizus. Vayashkem Avraham baboker, for what? To go do the Ratzon Hashem, to go to the Akedah. Vayachavosh es chamoiroi. And he went, Mesiris Nefesh, he saddled his own donkey. So you're not going to find a kitrig on Klal Yisrael. They all learn Mesilas Yesharim. They know about zrizus. They know about zihirus. They know about zrizus. They know about Mesiris Nefesh. You're not going to find a kitrig on Klal Yisrael that way. Same thing over here. Haman, he was coming. He's going to give Aseres Alofim Kikar Kesef to go wipe out Klal Yisrael. The Rav Sham said, their shkalim, their machatzis hashekel came a long time before your machatzis hashekel. In any case, that's the source for the minhag that we have, that before Purim, we give a machatzis hashekel as a zecher to which machatzis hashekel? To the annual machatzis hashekel that was always collected when? On Rosh Chodesh Adar. So the beginning of the collection started in Adar. So before Purim, which is in Adar, we give a machatzis hashekel as a zecher to that machatzis hashekel that we gave every year for the korbanos tzibbur. And that's what the Ramah mentioned at the closing of yesterday's shir. The Ramah said that there's a minhag, yesh omrim, here on Kuf Samach and Aleph, yesh omrim sheyesh litain kaidem pura machatzis min hamatbea kavua b'is hamakom u'b'is hizman zecher l'machatzis hashekel she'inoisted ba'adar. Since it says the word truma 3 times in the parsha, like I showed you, even though that's talking about 3 different trumas, only one of them is the trumas halishka. Still, because it says truma 3 times, yesh litein shloisha. That's why we give 3 halves of the local currency. So we give $1.50. Okay, now we were holding yesterday, says the Ramah, bottom line here, V'yesh litnoi b'leil Purim. The Ramah says that the minhag was supposed to give it the Purim evening, that means Motzoi, late in the day, Tainus Esther, Koidim mispalel mincha, before we daven mincha, and the Ramah says, V'chein noihagid b'chol medinos elu, and that's the minhag in our region, says the Ramah, to give it by mincha, Tainus Esther in the evening, so it's really before Purim. Says the Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Dalid, which begins with the last word on Kuf Samach and Aleph, Beleil Purim. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Uve Medinois Seinu, in our Medinois, Noihagin Litnoi B'Shacharis, the minhag was to give the machatzis hashekel Purim morning, Koidem Kriyas HaMegillah, before Megillah laning, Magen Avram. He quotes that from the Magen Avram. However, the Chavetz Chaim himself says, "V'achshav nowadays, noihagid litein machatzis hashekel koydem mincha." The minhag goes back to what the Ramah said, that the minhag is to give it before mincha on Tainis Esther, and then ubeshachris, in the morning of Purim, Mois Megillah, there was a different minhag, which was to collect Megillah gelt. Mois Megillah, which we're going to see, there was a minhag to collect money to give it to the Balkaire, to give out to Aniyim other than Matanos Le'evyonim. There was a collection, Megillah gelt. They used it to pay the Balkaire, they gave to the Aniyim. So again, the Ramah says the minhag was to give it before mincha or at mincha time, Tainis Esther, before Purim. Magen Avram said Purim morning before Megillah lading. The Chavetz Chaim says that Akshav, and he brings this down for the Pri Megadim, nowadays the minhag is back like what the Ramah said, to give it by mincha. Now it's very good. The Gemara that I quoted to you from Megillah Yud Gimel Amud Beis, we see why you should give it before Purim, because of the Maimer of Reish Lakish, where the Rebbeinu Shalom Lefika Hiktim Shiklein Lishkalov. We want our machatzis hashekel to come before Haman's shkalim. So we want to give the machatzis hashekel before Megillah lading. So we give it before Purim even begins. We give it Tainis Esther mincha time. The Magen Avram that said give it Purim morning before Megillah, well, could be the reason for the Magen Avram. We already had several times that the Iker Megillah lading is the morning Megillah lading. So it could be the Magen Avram felt the best time to do it is before the morning Megillah lading. Okay, now let's go further in the Ramah. Says the Ramah, Kuf Samach Amud Beis, top line, middle of the line. V'yesh, how much should you give for the machatzis hashekel? Says the Ramah, V'yesh litein shloisha chatza'ei gedolim b'medinos elu. The Ramah says, in his medinos, which was somewhere in Poland, the Ramah says, the proper amount you're supposed to give is 3/2 of a coin that was called gedolim. We're going to see the Bir Halacha in a moment. So they had a coin, groschen. That was the currency in Poland, groschen. And they had a groschen that was called the big groschen. The gedolim, the big groschen. So the Ramah says, at least in his time, in his locale, you should give 3/2 of the gedolim. And he continues, the Ramah, why is that what you should give? Ki ein matbea sheshem machatzis aleha milavad zu. The only coin that they had in that locale and at that time that had the name machatzis attached to it, like we have, $0.50. So they had a machatzis gedolim. They had 1/2 of the gedolim coin. So you want to give 3/2, like the Ramah said, for the 3 mentions of Truma in Kisisa. So fine. So you gave 3/2 of the gedolim. Over Medinos Österreich, and the Ramah says in Austria, Yitru Shloisha Chatzi Wiener. You would give 3/2 of the Wiener coin. Shenikra Gamkein Machatzis, because there was a coin called a Machatzis Wiener, 1/2 of a Wiener. V'chein l'chol Medina Medina. In every Medina, if there's a 1/2 coin, that's what you give. You give that 1/2 coin. United States, you give the $0.50. England, I imagine, to give a £0.5, 1/2 pence, whatever exactly it's called. I don't remember. Okay, let's take a look at the Bir Halacha. Very interesting Bir Halacha. V'yesh litein shloisha chatzoi gedolim b'medinos elu. Hine, says the Chavetz Chaim, derech ha'olam, most people, when they read this Ramah, derech ha'olam, lefaresh, to understand and explain the words of the Ramah, chatzoi gedolim, what does it mean, 1/2 of a gadol? Chatzi gadol Polish. It's 1/2 of the big coin in Poland. V'hainu mashakarin b'medina seinu. That's what we call chatzi groschen, 1/2 of a groschen. V'loy mashbekei b'darkei Moshe ayin sham. But the Chavetz Chaim says that doesn't seem to sit well in the words of the Ramah on the Torah in the Darkei Moshe. That the Ramah was referring to 1/2 of a groschen. V'ulai hushay matbea acheres shenikra came in medinasai. Maybe aside from the big groschen, there was another coin in the time of the Ramah, the locale of the Ramah, called gedolim. Why does he say that the Ramah is not mashma, that it was referring to a half of a groshen? Shekasav sham, because he writes over there, shechatzi gadol, that this half of a gadol that he's referring to, hu tisha pshutin kitanim, is the value of 9 pshutim, 9 small pshutim. Uvemedina seinu case elonu matbeyazu. We don't, this kind of coin that he's talking about does not seem to be extant or extant. Proper pronunciation, by the way, is either way. Both are acceptable, extant or extant. Okay. Ulefi Medina Seinu Nire, says the Chavetz Chaim, according to the Medinos Raden, according to the Medinos of the Chavetz Chaim, he says Nire, it would seem, the Medina Yoitze Bebabek Tana, Shenikra Chatzi Groshen. The Chavetz Chaim says that in his time and in his place, it would seem that you could be Yoitze with a small coin that was called a chatzi garush, a half of a groshen. There was such a coin. Alvo become makaim ein zemat beach shuva klal. But the Chavetz Chaim says what's funny about that is you're going to be yoytze matanis machatzis hashekel. We're not talking about Tosef Yanim. You're going to be yoytze machatzis hashekel with this chatzi groshen, which is not worth anything. Afilu im noisit shloisha chatzon. Even if you go give 3 of them, like the Ramah said for the 3 mentions of truma, it's not worth anything. Unless you're going to give for your whole family, including your little babies. So then maybe you'll have enough. That'll be worth something. But like this, if a person just gives 3 chatzi groshen, says the Biur Halacha, he's not giving anything. Now, the Chavetz Chaim says, and he seems to have a problem with the idea that you're going to be yoitze machatzis hashekel with something that is just so valueless. Therefore, says the Chavetz Chaim, I have seen some gaboim shenoistin mitchila b'haka'ora shel tzedakah. They would put on the plate, on the bima, where they pull out the plates or the bowls for the machatzis hashekel. So the Chavetz Chaim says he has seen that they would on the collection plate they would put shloisha chatza'e ruble kesef. They would put out 3 coins. Each coin is a half of a silver ruble. Now, the 3 coins, 3 times half of a silver ruble, is worth a lot more than 3 half groshen. Now, what are they trying to accomplish? They're trying to get away from the Chavetz Chaim's problem. The Chavetz Chaim said in his Medinas, it would seem, you could be yoitze machatzis hashekel with 3 half groshen coins. But the 3 half groshen coins are not worth anything. So what did the Gabbai do? The Gabbai said, we'll take 3 half silver ruble coins. That's already worth something. We'll put that on the collection plate. Now when somebody comes with his 3 half groshens, and he wants to be yoitze machatzis hashekel with his 3 half groshens, noisid lo Gabbai takas ma'osav, the Gabbai would give him in exchange for his 3 half groshen coins, hashloisha chatzai ruble kesef. Oh, so they come and they do a swap. The gentleman comes in, he gives the Gabbai 3 half groshen coins, and now the Gabbai gives him 3 half silver ruble coins, so that he could take those 3 half silver ruble coins and use something that has value to be yoitze machatzis hashekel. So noisad Gabbai takas va'osav hashloisha chatzai ruble kesef. And then this fine gentleman puts the 3 half silver ruble coins into the collection plate to be yoitze machatzis hashekel. So what just happened over here? The guy came in with 3 half groshen coins that are worth nothing. He gave them to the Gabbai. The Gabbai gave him 3 valuable half silver ruble coins. And now he takes the 3 half silver ruble coins and puts them into the collection plate to be yoitze machatzis hashekel. Says the Chavetz Chaim, this is not clear to me. Mechuvar means clear. The word of the Gemara that everybody reads machavarta is not machavarta, it's michavrosa. It comes from the shorish of chevar, which means white or clear. So, this says this is not clear to me. When the Gabbai hands this guy the 3 half silver ruble coins, what is the intent? Is he giving it to him as a loan for 30 seconds? so he could borrow it to put it into the plate. And when the guy gets it and puts it into the plate, he's not really giving it to the tzedakah. It's just a functionary. All it is a piece that the next guy is going to come in and use. So haloi ein ze nisina klal. So there's no nisina over here. V'hu marim rak la'atzmai bazeh. Says the Chavetz Chaim, if that's what you do, you're not fooling anybody but yourself. You gave 3 half-groschen coins to tzedakah. Now you're making this trick over here with the 3 half silver ruble coins. You're not accomplishing anything. Now, if you'll say that no. The Gabbai is really giving this gentleman the 3 half silver ruble coins. They are yours. He's giving them to the guy. And when the guy puts it back in the plate, he really has kavanah to give it to tzedakah. Now, why the Gabbai would do that, I don't know. I mean, why is he selling 3 half silver ruble coins for 3 half groschen? It doesn't really make sense. But if the Gabbai really sold it to him, and now the guy really took it, it's his, and he really gave it to tzedakah, in that case, it's the Chavetz Chaim, you still have a problem. Zehu eitza rak laharishay. This only works for the first guy. You know why? It doesn't work for anybody who comes later. Because now, when the first guy bought the 3 silver half ruble coins and gave it to tzedakah, now they belong to tzedakah. How could the Gabbai now take these 3 silver half ruble coins that completely belong to tzedakah and sell them to the next hashekel customer for 3 half groshens? You're not allowed to take something from tzedakah that's worth $10 and sell it for $5. So he can't do that. So how does it work for the next guy? No, says the Chavetz Chaim, v'ulai maybe, kevet shekvan nagu kach, since this is the minhag, havelei kilu histu behedya kol hanoistam l'tzedakah shenoistam al oifid zeh sheyeh lagabai rishus lazeh. No, Chavetz Chaim says maybe we could say that that's the stam das. Whoever gave those 3 silver half ruble coins to tzedakah was on this condition that it's going to be constantly sold for lesser value to be used in order for people to be yoitza machatzis hashekel. No, l'maisa, what do we do nowadays? In a lot of places, we have to give 3 half dollars. Our currency is the dollar, so we give half dollars. Now, we don't have half dollars, so the Gabbai takes 3 half dollars. They try to get old ones that are actually silver. They take 3 half dollars, tape them together or what it is, put them in a bag, put them on the collection plate, but you come with $1.50. You don't come with 25 cents. You don't buy the 3 silver half dollars for 25 cents. You come for $1.50, which is exactly what they're worth. And you buy them for $1.50 so that you can use them to be yotzei machatzis hashekel. So you should have 3 half dollars. Okay, very good. Nice bir halacha. Every bir halacha is nice. Okay, now let's go further in the Rama. Says the Rama. 3 lines down, middle of the line. Ve'ein chayev litnai rak mishahu mi ben esrim ulamal. Very interesting. The Rama says, who has to give machatzis hashekel? Only people 20 years of age and up. Okay, why is that? Let's see the Mishnah Berurah. Ois cut hey, mi ben esrim shana ulamayla. Oh, it says the Chavetz Chaim, zeu l'das Rabbeinu Avadia mi bar Tanura. That's true according to the Rav on the Mishnayos in Masechta Shkolim Perek Aleph Mishnah Gimel. Over there, the Mishnah says that Ketanim don't have to give. Says the Rav, Ketanim don't have to give. Who's called Ketanim? Anybody under 20. Aval Taisis Yomtiv Kasa, but the Taisis Yomtiv over there writes, Shah Paiskim Cholkim. Many Paiskim disagree with the Rav. Usvira Luhu, and they hold, Dimi Ben Shloisha Esrei Ulamayla. Anybody from 13 and up, Shu B'Klal Ish, bar mitzvah, right? So usually anybody over 13, we call a bar mitzvah, we call him a gadol, we call him an ish. So anybody over 13, chayiv machatzis hashekel, has to give machatzis hashekel. What is this machlokes based on? Interestingly enough, this machlokes is based on what I read to you from the parsha of Kisisa. I told you that in Kisisa, you have truma mentioned 3 times, and it's referring to 3 different trumas. One truma is referring to the trumas hamishkan. One truma is referring to the truma of the machatzis hashekel for the adonim. And then there's one truma that's referring to our truma, the trumas halishka, the machatzis hashekel for the korbanos. And that's where our machatzis hashekel comes from. Question is, which pasuk is referring to which truma? So, Taisus Yom Tov says, the Rav says that our truma and the truma of the lishka for the korbanos, you only have to give it if you're 20 and up. Says the Taisus Yom Tov. You know why? Because the Rav learnt which pasuk is talking about the trumas halishka. Ze yitnu kala over al hapekudim. This is what everybody who was counted has to give. Machatzis hashekel b'shekel hakodesh. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Next pasuk. Pasuk says, who has to give machatzis hashekel? Kol ha'over al hapekudim. Everybody who passed through the counting procedure, mi ben esrim v'mala, from the age of 20 and up, yitain trumas Hashem. So who has to give trumas halishka? Says the Rav, 20 and up. So who has to give machatzis hashekel before Purim? 20 and up. Taisus Yom Tov says, but why did the Rav learn that way? You could learn that the one that's going on the trumas halishka is the first pasuk. Ze yitnu kol over al pekudim, machatzis hashekel b'shekel hakodesh, esrim gera hashekel, machatzis hashekel truma Hashem. Or maybe the last one. Over there, it doesn't say anything about age. It doesn't speak about being counted, which would be 20 and up. It doesn't say mi ben esrim shana v'mala. So maybe the last pasuk is going on the trumas halishka. Why should the middle one be going on the trumas halishka? So therefore, says the Taisus Yom Tov, he doesn't see why the Rav insists that it has to be anybody, only people over 20. Says the Chavetz Chaim weiter, over here in Mishnah Berurah's Cut Hey, the Eliyah Rabba Kasav, the Eliyah Rabba writes, Techol Zerak Medina. This whole discussion of at what age do you have to start giving machatzis hashekel, that's only me'ikar adin. Avala minhag hu litein afilu ba'ad banav aktanim. The minhag is to give even on behalf of your minor children. V'isha mu'uberes ba'ad v'loda, and an expectant woman gives for the child in her womb. Isa b'Mishnah, the Mishnah in Shkalim says, Kol katan shehiskel aviv lishkal al yodai, any katan where his father has already started to give machatzis hashekel on his account, shuv einoi paisik. So once you give machatzis hashekel for your minor child once, now you got to keep on doing it. Not allowed to stop. The Rambam in the halachas of machatzis hashekel, it's the Rambam in the Pirush Mishnayos Rambam on Masechta Shkalim. He says the reason for this is very fascinating concept. He says once the father started to give the machatzis hashekel on behalf of the child, he already placed the chiyuv on him. That chiyuv already exists on him, but he can't do it, so the father's got to do it for him. Interesting concept, how you could put a chiyuv already on a cotton. Okay, let's go weiter. Says the Ramah. 3 lines down near the end of the line. V'yesh oimrim shenoiste machatzis hashekel tzedakah milavad shalosh machatzis elu ve'noegin kain. The Ramah brings down a minhag. There was a minhag. It all started with the machatzis hashekel. Then we said we give 3 machatzis hashekel. Why? Because it says truma 3 times. Now the Ramah says, then there was another minhag to give a 4th machatzis hashekel as stam tzedakah. So you have matanos levyodim, you have 3/2 of the local coins for machatzis hashekel, and then another machatzis hashekel for tzedakah. And the Ramah closes off by saying ve'ein noegin kain. But you should know that at the end of the long biur halacha that we read, we didn't go all the way to the end. All the way at the end, the Chavetz Chaim says, "Umi she'oizra HaKadosh Baruch Hu," somebody who the Rebbeinu Shalom helped, she'yochel litei chatzi rubel kesef echad zeichel machatzis hashekel, and he has the ability to give a machatzis hashekel, a 1/2 of a silver ruble coin for the machatzis hashekel, ushloisha chatzai gadol polish, and then 3 half groshens, le'inyan masha kasav b'parsha shloisha pa'abim truma, ukehayesh oimim ha'akrid shekasav ha'ramah, ashrei v'toiv loi. So the biur halacha says, if you're able to do the 4 machatzis hashekel, but he's going a little easy on you, only 1 machatzis hashekel do you have to make a half of the silver ruble coin. The other 3 could be half groshen. Ashrei v'toivloi, its fortune and goodness should be his. Okay, let's go weiter. Sif Beis. Ein mishanim ma'is Purim litstaka acheres. There's a very interesting brisa brought down in the Gemara in Bamitzia and Daf Ayin Ches Amid Beis, where the brisa says, I'm forgetting the word, Migvas Purim lePurim. A collection that was done for Purim has to be used for Purim. Now this is very interesting. Normally when the Gaboit Tzedakah collects tzedakah, the halacha is that the Gaboit Tzedakah have the right to kind of transfer tzedakah funds from one type of fund to another type of fund with certain restrictions. But when it comes to money that was collected for Sudas Purim, we're not talking here about Matanas Levyonim. We're talking about Sudas Purim. We have Aniyim in the town. They have to be able to make a Sudas Purim. So we collected money for Sudas Purim. The Brisa says, you collect money for Sudas Purim, it has to be used for Sudas Purim. And the way Rashi understands the Brisa, the Brisa says is like this. Let's say they collected a lot of money for Sudas Purim. The Gabbai Tzedakah looks at it. He says, I don't need all of this money to provide the needs of the Aniyim for Sudas Purim. So I'll take $1,000 to buy the needs of the Sudas Purim for the Aniyim that we have. The other 4,000 that we collected, I'll just put into the tzedakah fund. And we'll use it the rest of the year for tzedakah. Says the Brisa in Masechtas Bava Metzia, no. Migvas Purim lePurim. Money that was raised for Simchas Purim, you got to use it for Purim. But I can't use it for Purim. I don't have reasonable expenditures for that. Says the Brisa, go out, go to Glotmart, go buy meat. Buy a lot of meat. And then serve whatever you could serve. And they'll eat what they'll eat. What's left over, you'll sell. And then the funds that you bring in from the sale, that you'll put back into the tzedakah fund. That's the way, there's a lot of machlekes rishonim over here. That's the way Rashi seems to understand. Based on that brisa, says the Mechaber, Ein mishanim ma'is Purim l'tzedakah acheres. You cannot divert Purim funds for any other kind of tzedakah purpose. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Vav, Ein mishanin ma'is Purim. You cannot divert ma'is Purim. Hainu ma'is shegava ois anagabe lechalkom la'aniyim l'sudas Purim. You collected money to give a Sudas Purim to the Aniyim. Ein yachal l'shanoisan. You cannot now divert them. Loimar to say dayon bepachas. I have enough with less money. I don't need so much money. V'amoiser, the extra money, yipar lekis shel tzedakah. I'll put it into the tzedakah account. You can't do that. Aval, rather, loichin agolim loroiv. Buy plenty of calves. Buy plenty of meat. B'chol amois. Use all the money on Purim Suda food. V'amoiser shaloi yaspiku lechel b'Purim. And whenever they don't eat on Purim, yimkar sell. V'yipar lekis shel tzedakah. That leftover, you'll end up putting back into the tzedakah account because you used it for Purim. It's leftovers. But you didn't divert the funds. You used it all for Purim. No, there are leftovers. So there are leftovers. You put it back into the tzedakah fund. Kasa Beis Yosef Peshem Hagos Hashri. The Beis Yosef writes in the name of the Hagos Hashri. The Moshe Choshav, this is a fascinating halacha. The Moshe Choshav b'libo lechalkom la'aniyim b'yom Purim. You thought in your mind, this Purim, I'm giving out $5,000. This Purim, I'm giving out $50,000. You just thought it in your mind. You never wrote the check. You never even verbalized it. You just thought it in your mind. You're not allowed to backtrack. You're not allowed to change it. Vatam, the reason is, the Svirale, because the Hagos Hashri held, the tzedakah yesh lo din hegdish. Tzedakah has a din of hegdish. By hegdish, there's a halacha. If you thought it, you got to do it. Even if you didn't verbalize it, so too on Purim. You can't divert the Purim tzedakah funds to anything else. Says the Chavetz Chaim, if there's a custom in that city, Purim from the collection of the Megillah Gelt to give to the Balkorei, Ein Isser Badavar. Don't think that it's Usser. In other words, we just said Migvas Purim lePurim, that when you collect Purim funds, it's got to be used for Purim, lest you think that any of the Purim funds that you collected and all must be used for Sudas Purim. No. If there's a minhag to use it to pay the Baal Korah, that's the minhag. You're allowed to do that. Because anybody who contributed to the funds, they contributed with the understanding that the Gabarim are going to use it as per the minhag. But if people are counting on being Yotzei Matanis Levyonim by giving Megillah Gelt, and now you use all the Megillah Gelt for the Baal Korah, they're not Yotzei Matanis Levyonim. Afilu Machazin Hu Ani, and that's true even if the Baal Korah is an Ani. The Kevedu B'Chal Schiras HaChazan, because now it's his paycheck. Havalei Parei Chayvei B'Matanis Levyonim. You're trying to pay a chayv, right? The shul owes him the salary. You can't do that with Matanis Levyonim. So the people won't be Yotzei Matanis Levyonim with the Megillah Gelt unless you use some of the Megillah Gelt to taka give out to the Aniyim. Says the Ramah 4 lines from the bottom. Hago, V'dafka hagaboim. It's only the Gaboim that cannot divert the funds to a different use. Aval ha'oni, but the recipient, the Ani who gets the money from the Gaboim, Yachalasas by Masha Yirtze. He could use the money for whatever he wants. He wants to buy a new pair of shoes, he could buy a new pair of shoes. Now, this might not sound like such a chiddush, but that's because you didn't see the Gemara on Ayin Chesed Beis. The Gemara on Ayin Chesed Beis of Bab Metzia brings down a shita of Rabbi Yaakov, maybe Rabbi Yaakov or Rabbi Yeshua, that says that no, even the Ani is not allowed to use it for anything else. It was given to him al das Sudas Purim, and it was collected for him. Al das Sudas Purim. He can't use it for anything else. But we don't paskin that way. I believe we paskin like, I'm pretty sure it's Rabbi Gamliel, that we paskin like, I hope I'm right, and who says that the Ani could use it for whatever he wants. Says the Mishnah Berurah, it's only the Gaboim that have this restriction. How about Vim B'nei Ha'ir Yechayel B'Lashanis? Okay, so the Gaboim cannot divert the funds. But how about the B'nei Ha'ir? Could the B'nei Ha'ir, could the board of the shul get together and decide that this year's collection of Megillah Gelt is going to go it's not all going to be used for Sudas Purim. What we're going to use for Sudas Purim, what we feel we need, but the rest we're going to put back into the stock account? Could the B'nei Ha'ir do that? Says the Chavetz Chaim Yesh Deis Papaiskim. There are different opinions amongst the Paiskim. He sends us Ayin B'Magad Avram. Ois Katan Tes, Marsha Yirtze, the Ani could do what he will. Ritzayno Loimar, after Hagoyvim Gavo Amois L'tzar Sudas Purim, even though the money was collected and distributed for Mois Purim, the Ani could do what he wants. Mekamakim Yesh Lani Rishos, Loitzian L'shar Tzarchav, the Ani could use it for other needs of his. Sif Gimel, Ein Medaktigim B'Mois Purim. We're not exceptionally careful with Purim Gelt. Somebody comes on Purim and says, could you spare $1? We don't look into him and make sure he has a harsha and he has a letter from 16 Gedolim and that was signed by all of the Rabbanim of New York State. We don't do that on Purim. Purim, a guy comes, he collects, you give. In a shtot where they have the minhag that they even give to non-Jews, you give. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Uvamakim shenagu, in a place where they're accustomed to giving even to non-Jews, alvo be'ir shaloi hurgalu adayin bekach. But if it's a city where they don't yet have that minhag, then says the Chavetz Chaim, zan noisid pruta la'akum. If you take from that stock of money and you give it to non-Jews, goizel la'aniyim. You are stealing from the Yiddish aniyim. Don't divert it to non-Jews if you have Yidden who need it. Umara ba'atzmai kilu mekayim behem u'matanas lavyonim. It looks even like he's trying to be mekayim the mitzvah of matanas lavyonim by giving to non-Jews. Why are we giving to them? Because of Darkei Shalom. The Sharatzian and Ois Katan Yud Aleph says, even though I said in the Mishnah Berurah that you should only do this if it's already the established minhag, but in a new city you shouldn't set that expectation, says the Chavetz Chaim in the Sharatzian and Mekamokim, Af Be'ir Chadasha, even in a new city, Kol Sheyesh Bazeh Darkei Shalom, if there's a need to give to them because of Darkei Shalom, Noistim, you should give. Finally, let's go to Sif Daled. Says the Mechaber, B'Mokim She'ein Aniyim. In a locale, the Baruch Hashem, there are no Yiddish Aniyim. Yachal la'akev mois Purim shaloi la'atzmai. A person has the right to retain his matanas la'evyonim money, v'noisdam b'makom sheyirtze, and give it out at another time in another place where there is a need. Says the Mishnah Berurah cutting your base, b'makom she'en aniyim Yisrael. There are no Yiddish aniyim. Ice cutting your gimel mois Purim shaloi hainu. What does this mean that he could hold on to his matanas la'evyonim? So first the Chofetz Chaim says, hainu mashegavu kfar mimenu. They came to him, they collected matanas la'evyonim. Now he finds out that the shul doesn't have anybody to give matanas la'evyonim to. He could go back to the shul and say, give me back the matanas la'evyonim. Now he's not going to use it for himself. He already designated it for tzedakah, but he could distribute it to tzedakah as he wishes. He doesn't have to leave it by the shul. They took it from him. They didn't have anybody to give it to. But the Chofetz Chaim says another pshat, v'yoser nireh. It seems more mistabra, says the Chofetz Chaim. What the Rama wants to say is, this guy always gives $180 for matanas la'evyonim. He finds out that this year there's nobody to distribute it to. He can hold on to the $180 and he'll give it to aniyim. He'll give it to tzedakah when he has the opportunity to whom he wishes to give it to. He's not mechuyev to just give it over to the shul. Okay, thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The schus of limud HaTorah should be megan against Klal Yisrael. The Rosh should send Yeshua Sephor's Parnasa and Shidduchim to all those in need. And we should be zeicher to see the B'Yeskel Tzedek and Herav Yameinu. Amen. Be well.